Hey there, all you beautiful Texans. Welcome back to the James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Let's go. Dude, dumpster fire. The whole year is a dumpster fire. Like, we thought 2020 was some kind of weird year. And I'm not saying this is worse, but this is definitely its own little malignant tumor in and of itself, as if we don't have all the weird stuff going on around the election cycle and the president who has brains that are basically the dirt that is on the mound at the Texas Rangers Globe Life Park. They had the home run derby last night, and it's here in our backyard. It's in Arlington. And the lady who sings the national anthem for the home run derby, her name's Ingrid Andress. I don't even think I've heard of her before, but when I see her, she looks kind of familiar. She said she was drunk last night. She was drunk last night singing the anthem at the home run derby. Well, how bad could it be? Why does she have to admit that she's drunk? Okay, here it is. Dude, she's getting booed. Oh, say does that star she looks lit. Oh, I can't do this. Like, if you know you're going to sing the national anthem on national TV in front of a giant audience, wouldn't you cut it off at like 8 beers, maybe 9? Oh, God. All right, that is the worst lead-in possible for my next guest, Anthony Russo, coming back on from the Truth Will Set You Free podcast, as if everything in this year has to be a dumpster fire, Anthony.
Well, why you gotta lead in with that one? Why you gotta give me that as my theme music?
That's the worst, man. All right, your thoughts so far on the Republican National Convention? You know, a lot happened yesterday with Trump's court cases being thrown out, announcing a VP, and then a couple of big speeches there with Tim Scott and Amber Rose. And let me just, before we get into specifics, your general takeaway thus far.
Well, you know, coming off of a very odd weekend, obviously, something that's unprecedented in 4 decades in the United States of America, and you've got a former president, whatever you want to call it, trying to be elected, going to the Republican National Convention with almost a heroic status. And his entry last night was something that you have to really hate Donald Trump to not at least get some chills when the arena erupted when he came in last night to Lee Greenwood, and Lee Greenwood, you know, singing directly to him, talking to him. I think that the first night was fantastic. And for me, as somebody that went from the Democrat Party when I was growing up and when I was younger and made the switch and still have some more liberal values in some senses, seeing them bring more liberal Democrat speakers, the head of the Teamsters, Amber Rose, people that are making the switch, I think was incredibly important. Even though there are some staunch conservatives that weren't a huge fan of Amber Rose being there, I think that we are finally doing what the Democrats do when it comes to marketing and finding a way to speak to more than just our base.
Well, you know, I'm glad you pointed out when Trump came out, because he didn't speak. He didn't get on stage. There's no audio I can play of him, but he just walked through the procession and you could hear the crowd. Now, something happened at the end that I think may be one of the defining characteristics when we look back in future years of what 2024 was, or at least the election of 2024 was. They didn't break out into the USA chant like they did at the rally when he got shot. They broke out into a fight, fight, fight chant. And I think this is going to be here to stay for the rest of the election season.
Mark Lawrence from Cedar Springs, Michigan.
And obviously emotion.
Yeah, hush, Jake Tapper. But yeah, that fight, fight, fight chant. I think we're going to be hearing that through November.
Absolutely, and we should be. I mean, in all reality, if you want my honest opinion on the failed assassination attempt, this is a man that, you know, we've talked before. I'm not a 100% Trumper, But at the same time, you look at what's happened to him. They first went for his reputation, and then they go for his finances. Then they go to get him legally, and nothing is taking him down in the eyes of the American people. And that leaves only one thing left. And Donald Trump Jr. said the same thing that I've been saying since Saturday, which is you only have one thing left. And I'm not going to finger point and say 100% the Democrat Party went after Trump or all these things, but there were so many failures that something there has to be, obviously, you have to feel that was suspicious. And at the end of the day, you had a guy come out of it triumphant. You almost have to think biblically in this sense and say, this is probably what we need as a country right now. Is we have to fight back against what is trying to end the American ideal, and I think it's important to recognize the magnanimity of the situation.
Can you hang on through the break, Anthony?
I'm here. You got me.
Yeah, you're making some good points there, and I want to continue with him next on the James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Homeowners, listen to me. We just had another round of rain. If you're noticing anything, do not test Google. Do not play Google roulette and type in roof and company and say, well, whoever I get here, it'll probably be fine. No, that's how people get burned. You need to go with a reputable company, someone that has over 100 and something reviews on their Google site. If you go check it out, and don't just listen to the guy on the radio. What do you think? I know how to properly rank roofing companies? No, don't take my word for it. Do your own research. Don't Google me, test me, check it out. I met with the owner, Greg Hiltz. He showed me all the Google reviews. And unless they have some amazing bot farm where they came up with 150 fake Google reviews, I think that should back up the opinion with a little bit of fact there, a little bit of experience, and a little bit of reason why these guys are going to be around. So when they do give you the guarantee and you call them up in 3 months or 5 months or a year or so, they'll still be there to pick up the phone, because that's their number one thing. The biggest problem you have finding a contractor is, number one, getting them to answer the phone or call you back or show up on time. You don't have to worry about that with Paradigm Roofing. They're going to have a full-time job supervisor, and if there's still any problems after that, Greg, the owner, his cell phone number is going to be on the bottom of your contract, so you can call the owner if you ever need to. Hopefully you won't, but putting a new roof on your home, it's a big job. Don't play Google roulette. Call Paradigm Roofing. 972-542-7774. 972-542-7774. Hey there, welcome back to the James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. We continue with my buddy Anthony Russo from the Truth Will Set You Free podcast. And the Republican National Convention is something that is the only window to a few demographics and constituencies that the Republicans get, and they only get it like every 4 years. There are people that are tuned into this that normally wouldn't be getting this message. If you were telling them, if you were consulting for the RNC right now, what would your focus be?
I mean, it would be exactly what we saw last night. I think that was a great way to start out, and and again, I don't think it was necessarily on purpose on the timing, but all the eyes are on Trump. They're on the Republican Party because of what happened on the weekend, and you finally showed some people that are not typically Republicans speaking. And I think JD Vance, I'm indifferent on the selection of JD Vance as VP, but I know why. He has great relationship with unions, specifically the Teamsters. Having the Teamsters president, I think he was the president, speak last night is a big deal, because Teamsters in the states that matter, that are swing states like Ohio, Pennsylvania, Michigan, they carry between 1 to 3, in some cases even 4% of the vote, because people follow the unions. So that's a huge deal. And I think that's why JD Vance was selected. I know virtue signaling people are not going to be too happy because there's not a woman or a person of color, but I think it's important to carry those states. That would change the election from the Electoral College perspective. And then you have the ability to have somebody like Amber Rose. Everybody, it's become one of the most viral clips of any convention in history, to see a woman that went from more of the promiscuous lifestyle, obviously, more of a gangster rap situation, to somebody that's given her life to God, theoretically, and also became a Republican. She's still imperfect. Obviously, she's human, but she's somebody that has 20-something million followers on social media plus. And her clip's going very viral, why she left the Democrat Party. And I think that is really the key. Today is just chock full of amazing speakers. You got Vivek, you got Ted Cruz. You mentioned a whole bunch of people speaking earlier. Like, if there's a day you want to go and look at policy and politics, today's the day with all the speakers, and then you got Trump. But I think they're doing it the right way right now.
Amber Rose, 24.3 million followers. That's just on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness. And it's not the 23 or 24 million people that are following Tucker Carlson. This is a whole separate set that all they know about politics. A big chunk of our audience, I imagine, all they know about politics is Democrats good, Republicans bad.
100%. And again, she's made the switch over, and you could see all of her social medias, like she's got the MAGA, and then I think her movement is Move or something like that. But she can speak to that group that what the Democrats constantly do. And I'm not going to lie, if you believe in authenticity and that people can see that, the Democrats that come out and say things, typically supporting Joe Biden, it feels staged, but it doesn't matter because they're young and cool and they're hip and they'll take it. This, Amber speaking the way that she did, speaking from the heart, telling kind of her story, and also the fact that she has made the move seems a heck of a lot more authentic. So I think that this is how we might be able to move the needle in some of the people never get to see people switching over. All they think of is, oh, no, nobody switches to the Republican Party. How could they? Only old people switch over. So I think that was, again, I don't think she's a perfect person in any way, shape, or form, but I think it's incredibly important to the Republican Party, the Republican movement, and the actual vote coming up.
Let me ask you the opposite question. If you're the Democrats, how would you spin what's going on at the RNC?
I got to be honest, I don't know. Like right now, this is the first time I would actually say the Democrats from a marketing perspective are in trouble. You just had an attempted assassination to which a president got up and pumped his fist. Like, there's no more heroic photo in the history of the presidency. Like, they're losing on that aspect. They're losing on the fact that maybe their rhetoric might have got them in trouble. Any middle ground voter is going to see that. And then you see what's happening at the Republican convention, and all they've been leaning on is Project 2025. And I think they're going to try to stick to that. Problem is, all the messaging at the convention has been going against Project 2025. So right now, I think this is the first time the marketing minds' backs are against the wall in the Democrat Party. And I don't know how they spin it. I think they just continue with Trump bad and do the best that they can, but I think it's backfiring. So honestly, I think they're in trouble.
And that's the crazy part. I think their biggest, probably most useful topic or issue right now is abortion. There's still a big chunk of the country that it's a single issue voter, and it's 100% based on their love of abortion, or at least their support of abortion. And you think about it, 1 million or so abortions every year. From here on out, you think any of those women would want to take that option away from the women who come behind them? And I think that's what's so crazy about the Amber Rose bit is exactly her target demo. That's exactly who got the message last night if they were paying attention to Amber Rose.
Absolutely. And I've talked, I mean, the red wave, say what you want, the red wave in 2022 did not happen because of the abortion topic. It wasn't like there was a 20% shift. It was that 3 to 5% in most states that caused the Republicans to not fully take over Congress. So coming into this election, the fact that Trump has been very clear about his stance, Roe versus Wade is accurate. Banning abortion on a federal level is not correct. That's not the way that it should be done. You've got more modern voices coming in. You've got the unions talking about the Republican Party. You've got the Amber Roses, and you've got more middle ground Republicans. I'd be very curious to listen today to see what the rhetoric is around the pro-life discussion, because I can't imagine the biggest mistake they could give the Democrats is more fodder for that abortion topic. Them to continue on with, they could say we believe in the sanctity of life. That's great. But to just take the hardline pro-life subject and hammer that down is going to hurt in the long run from a soundbites perspective, because right now we're winning that game. Everybody knows we're pro-life. Everybody knows this party of no abortions and all that stuff. We got it. Let's just not hammer it home and give more fodder for the left. Anthony Russo, how can they find you outside of the show? Truth Will Set You Free USA on all the social media platforms. That's the best way to do it. Boom. There you go. Anthony Russo, Truth Will Set You Free podcast. Thanks for being on the James Show again. Later, brother. All right. The conversation continues next. We're going to talk to Dr. Fahmi Farah, a cardiologist. Blood donations
have dropped. And look, they're cyclical, but we're having some issues now, and we'll see if we can right some of those wrongs. And then I want to talk to you. We'll get right back into politics after that. 800-288-9227. 800-288-9227. I just throw out an idea here. There was a commenter on the social media that earlier in the show said, who do you think's going to win the election? Oh, my goodness. Who do I think is going to win the election? I'm starting to run out of hypotheticals on how Trump loses in 3.5 months. What do you think? 800-288-9227. This is the James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there, welcome back to the James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. We're just having a chat. There's a whole lot going on. You're welcome to call in on any of the big stories of the day. 800-288-9227. 800-288-9227. It could be anything Trump related. JD Vance is the new VP pick. We got the RNC going on. We have some great speeches from last night. We have some more speeches coming up tonight. We have the fallout from people questioning the Secret Service and their horrible performance on Saturday and what needs to be done about that. I don't even know where to start. So let's ask you. We'll go to the phones. 800-288-9227. Let's do Paul in Dallas. You're next up on WBAP. What do you think, Paul?
James, I think that the reason the left is losing their mind and saying, well, we need to tone it down. We need to be about unity. We need to be about peace and all this. For the last 8 years, they have not been about that. They have been calling conservatives, patriots, Nazis, and fascists, and every kind of thing you can call someone that's a horrible name. They've been calling us, and they've been rioting and destroying cities and towns and destroying families, and they've just been causing chaos for the last 8 years on a regular basis.
Yes, and also, Paul, doesn't this feel a lot like their response to the October 7th terror attacks? We're like, hang on, we need to call a ceasefire. No, you don't call a ceasefire the day after you shoot at our guy. You don't call I mean, you've been running around, like the parallel between the Palestinians and the Israelis. They've been running around saying, we're going to wipe you off the planet. In fact, we're even going to put it in our mission. We're going to put it in our charter. The charter of Hamas, the mission statement is wiping the Jews off of the planet, and we're gonna call them vermin, and we're gonna do all kinds of attacks. We're gonna lob rockets. We're gonna rape them. We're gonna shoot up their concerts. And then when there's a fight back, it's like, whoa, where did all this violence come from? We need to be peaceful. Yeah, and
I don't think they realize the bear they've poked. There's more veterans that are conservative patriots that have been, basically put down and told they're animals. And there's, we are the largest military in the world is the veterans. And, Trump has a huge veteran support behind him. He's done more for the veterans through the VA than any other president. And it's they know they've messed up now, because and I'm not condoning violence. I don't want violence. But if a civil war started out, they would be pretty much wiped off this earth, because we know who the fighters are, and it's not the left. They're just chaos, and chaos has no commonality except chaos against their own people as well. We've seen that. But yeah, now they're backpedaling, trying to CYA because they know they've messed up, and it's sickening. And what we need is the dead fish Republicans that just lay there in their office and collect a paycheck to actually start working, stand up and fighting for something, and not just going along with the everyday stuff that they've been doing for the last 8 years.
And it's not just the political stuff. It's not just the Nazi and the Hitler stuff. There's a whole cultural, I feel like all of it's aimed at me because I just happen to check all the boxes that they hate. But I had to
of the American family.
Well, I also had to defend myself as not being worse than running into a random bear in the woods just a couple of months ago. And until that slander stops, none of their little, we've got to tone it down, or we've got to start to be peaceful now, or we've got to, you're worried about rhetoric now? I'm not buying it for 1 second. Thank you. And they were so ridiculous. I was having conversations with people, not just online, but on this show. I had a guest on the show to tell the other side of the story, and I was trying to explain how I am not worse than running into a bear. It's so ridiculous. Because what would you do if you ran into a bear in the woods and you had a gun? If it was coming at you, you'd shoot it, right? I am not worse than a bear. I'm not a Nazi. I'm not Hitler. I'm not a racist. I'm not a closet Klansman. I'm not a white nationalist, white supremacist, whatever it is. Just stop it. And don't act like, oh, well, both sides. The right has to tone down the rhetoric too. What do we call you? Socialist? Yeah, I mean, you call yourself socialist. AOC says she's a socialist. Bernie Sanders says there's a socialist. You adopt socialist policies. That's the worst thing you get called. We don't call you fascist. We don't call you Hitler. Marcus in Fort Worth, you're next up on WBAP. Go.
Yes, sir. I totally agree with that last caller. He was right on. I got a couple of things. One, I'm not in security, never have been. I'm driving trucks right now. I've done a lot of things, but I know if I was head of security, every building in sight would have somebody on it. Even when the president comes through Texas, there's a security agent on every bridge that he's going to pass under. I mean, it's not hindsight. It's common sense. You protect the president from every angle. If there's a tree line, if there's a bush, you make sure it's covered. And another thing, Biden himself has basically, to me, threatened the American people. If we rise up against a tyrant government, then he's going to turn F-16s on us. I think that's unconstitutional.
That's
and illegal.
Who would he shoot? I mean, like, where would you aim? Where would you aim for my parents' barn? How would you take us out with an F-15 anyway?
I'm sure he'd give it his best shot.
Look, and I feel, I noticed how you put some qualifiers on the beginning of your call. I felt the need to do that too. I am no security expert, but it seems like to me, and then we've had confirmation from the likes of people like Dan Bongino, who's on right before us here on WBAP, because from the layman's point of view, and thank you for your call, Marcus, it feels like if they put it up another stage, like just where Trump's was, and they had some old band like Molly Hatchet was playing a concert, security wouldn't have let someone on the roof next door. Like they would have locked it down a little bit more. If it had just been like the Cardigans or Harvey Danger or some other random one-hit wonder from the 90s. I mean, the security's really bad to let that happen. Now that we've had a chance to digest it and we're not emotional and we've all looked at the maps and we all looked at the charts, and that's pretty damn bad, isn't it? 800-288-9227, 800-288-9227. The conversation continues on The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there, welcome back to The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Continuing coverage of the Republican National Convention all week on WBAP. I'm going to be watching it. Mark Levin's going to be watching it. Chris Crock is watching it. The Morning Show is watching it. Casey Bartholomew's watching it. We're all keeping an eye on it. And it seems so weird that we have all these giant storylines going on at the same time around this election, which was already weird to begin with. This is the first time we've had a former president going up against an incumbent president. It's the first time we had zero of a primary / caucus season. The guys were already known. It was just a mere formality. And then you want to throw on a couple of other weird scenarios leading into the attempted assassination. And that was just 2 days before the Republican National Convention starts. Oh, yeah. A lot to talk about. Let's lean on one of our friends here. Back on the show from Young Voices, Connor Vassell. Welcome back to the James Show. I would like to first get your raw reaction to Trump's VP pick being JD Vance. You think this is a good move?
Thanks for having me back. I think it's a pretty solid pick. I mean, with what he's trying to go for, especially in this election cycle, Vance is a pretty solid pick with what Trump wants to go through in terms of the populist agenda, trying to reach out to the common man. And considering JP Vance's background, I think it's a pretty solid pick.
So I don't think he's going to pick up new demographics, but geographically speaking, a lot of people are making the point that he is very influential and could win voters in the Rust Belt area. Now, Ohio's been red, probably going to be red, no question about it. But this may help him pick up Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. Do you think that's the thought process here?
I believe that was the strongest persuasive element in picking Vance. I mean, a lot of those people, as you said, the Rust Belt, maybe down in Appalachia, these areas, they feel that they're forgotten by the government. And this is, regardless of whether it's a Republican or a Democrat, unfortunately, a lot of Americans these days feel just neglected by the people that are supposed to represent them. So Vance, in that sense, could pick up a lot of votes, but you're definitely right, sir. In terms of getting new voters, independent voters, in that sense, probably not.
Well, something that does look like it's aimed at picking up new voters. Amber Rose spoke at the Republican National Convention. Such a strange lineup that we have because she now is a proud supporter of all things MAGA, but just 9 years ago, she was one of the founding members of the Slut Walk. So how do you go from far left feminist activists to a Trump supporter? I find this a very compelling storyline.
Definitely. I mean, it's one of two pathways, right? One is that the Republicans or what Trump is offering is really that enticing for these people to really think about where they're coming from and wanting to switch aisles. The other one is that Biden and the Democrats are doing so poorly, so badly, that they're now sticking it to Trump now.
Yeah, well, I like that. I think the second part of your rationale makes a lot more sense because, look, the Republicans and Trump have been pretty consistent in their messaging. They haven't changed their policy positions or who they are or their approach to it or their color scheme or anything. I think a lot of the reason why some people seem to be thawing out to the idea that maybe Trump isn't Hitler is really just because of how poor Joe Biden has done.
Exactly. I mean, that's pretty much what it's come down to. We've all seen these past few years. Everyone has been struggling in terms of prices, socially, culturally. This whole country has been really struggling in that sense because we have an administration that really just genuinely does not care. Now, this whole new wave of unorthodox voters coming towards Trump, as you said, the lineup of speakers we had last night, we have the Teamsters now backing Trump. Whoever saw
what
that?
The heck is that about? Yeah, where'd that come from?
What universe do we live in? With all that said and done, it's good in the moment, right? You're having people who are at the very least open to the possibility that maybe a Trump administration, a second one, is good for them. Shocking, I know, scandalous to say. But the battle's not done. We need to ensure that in order to continually succeed in making sure that the Constitution is honored, we're having a less government, smaller government, maybe even do away with some superfluous agencies. We got to make sure that these new people who are entertaining a Trump vote actually understand the platform, understand where these leaders are coming from, and truly believe a quote-unquote Republican or conservative perspective as opposed to just voting for Trump out of disparity.
So I'm under the impression, Connor, that the Republicans are headed for a landslide in November and something huge, an October surprise or, I don't know, maybe a literal landslide would have to happen to stop this. Am I too optimistic?
You know, ever since 2016, I take everything with a huge grain of salt. Regarding polls, where we've seen recently, Trump is up in very many states, including those contentious areas. But at the end of the day, we have no clue what's going to happen. As you said, some surprise may come about, a literal landslide, an avalanche, a hurricane, whatever, could really tip the scales in any way. And I'm not going to hold my breath just yet. I mean, we've seen a little progress. We've seen, a lot of passion from voters, from everyday Americans. But at the end of the day, people need to go out and vote. And no one can control that except for those people themselves.
What do you think about my marketing recommendations? I haven't been part of a political campaign ever, but I think they should change their motto to something like "Hit me with your best shot" or something like that. Just any recommendations where they could capitalize on this even more?
Oh, definitely. I mean, they got timing on their side right now. They can just lean into that whole, like, you missed me, or, something like that. Right. Really bring about a Reagan moment. All that being said, people have been, in the past few days, have been wild. It's been a crazy news cycle. We all just want to take a break from it and just recuperate. That being said, people, I think, are really waking up to how ridiculous the situation is and really straying away from this whole woke ideology, which in the end it's not good for anybody.
All right, Connor, tell the folks in Texas what you got going on outside the James Show.
Great, thank you. So I'm on Twitter. You can follow me on Connor_Vasile, V as in Victor. I also got 2 books out on Amazon. The State Knows Best, which is about law enforcement and crime policy in America, and also I'm Joe Biden.
All right. You know how to spell Connor. That last name is Vasile. Thank you, Connor.
Thank you.
All right, I'd like to hear from you. Your thoughts. The same questions, really. Am I too optimistic in thinking that Trump's about to roll into a big fat landslide in November? Because my question isn't really like, is Trump going to win? It's like, is he going to flip the Senate? Is he going to expand his mandate in the House? Are they going to come? Is this going to be a big red wave? 800-288-9227. 800-288-9227. I mean, what at this point can stop this train? A bullet can't stop it. What can? I'm James Parker. It's The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there. Welcome to The James Show. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Well, my next guest here, Victoria Churchill's coming back on, and we've had her on before, but I'd be interested to see what she thinks, because I don't think you've ever been on when it's been this hot and heavy before. We just had an attempted assassination on Donald Trump on Saturday. The RNC has started. Trump's cases have been all thrown out until after the election. We now know who the VP is. I mean, so much going on. Welcome back to the show, Victoria Churchill. I mean, where do we even start here? I would say I would like to hear your thoughts on JD Vance. I don't know a whole lot about this guy. And that's kind of the one information hole I'm trying to fill. What's your thoughts on that, Victoria?
Well, thanks so much for having me back on. Always a great joy to join you in the afternoons as folks, start heading home and all that over in Texas. But yeah, it's definitely campaign season is in full swing. I think we talked about last time that, last time we talked, it was right after the debate, and we were like, this is really kind of early for a debate. Like, why are we even having it this early? And I think from then on, it's really been go, go, go for everybody, both on the Democrat and the Republican side, and for the media, which, as I chatted with you folks last time, I'm covering it with the swing state team over at the New York Post. So we've got coverage really from everywhere. We've got lots of folks in Milwaukee. I myself was in Pennsylvania this past weekend, so we're really covering it from all angles. We've got a massive team doing a great amount of work. And
wait a second, you weren't at the rally, were you? Were you in Butler?
So I was not in Butler. I was actually with the First Lady that day. She was doing an event in Pittsburgh, so I was about an hour away. But that means that kind of after the fact, I was part of the team that did, quite literally the postmortem on what happened that night. So I actually just got back home about an hour or two ago, driving back to D.C.
Okay, really that wasn't literally a postmortem. That was figuratively a postmortem. Nobody died. So, Victoria Churchill, you're a good person to talk to with the Swing State Project at the New York Post, because I was throwing out the theory. My theory is not only is Trump going to win, the real question is he going to extend his lead in the House and maybe even flip the Senate? Now, that's going to depend on these swing states. We have Senate seats up for grabs in Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, and Wisconsin, and those seem like really vulnerable, like they could be flipped. And that's part of the reason why I think the calculus on picking JD Vance is we keep being told he's real strong with this little Rust Belt area. What do you think the likelihood is that the Team Red takes back the Senate?
He's definitely going to be doing everything he can in his power. We were reporting this morning that the campaign is going to place him pretty much almost permanently in Pennsylvania, with travel out of that state into other key swing, as you mentioned, Rust Belt states like Wisconsin, like Michigan. So, that's where they're going to place him, because those states have traditionally been referred to as kind of the Democrats' blue wall, and Republicans are going to try and do everything in their power to take back those votes. Republicans are really making a play for working class Americans, which is, I think, a group that turned out pretty heavily for JD Vance in his Senate race. And so I think the Trump team is looking at that and saying, well, he's already won over these people once, he can do it again for us. And so I think that was the calculation. I think there was definitely some other people that were in kind of the last minute talks who maybe do have a little bit more political experience, but obviously with Trump, that's kind of, I think, never really been a part of his final decision making, with obviously himself being a political outsider and, having had the career that he's had since about, 2015, 2016 and so on, as we've all been following that for, gosh, crazy to think, 8 years, almost 10, close to 10 years, really. Like if we think back to 2015,
sure.
When he was just starting, coming down the escalator, that moment that everybody always refers to. So, I think Vance does help Trump in some of those areas. And, I think to another testament of Republicans really making a play for the working class, blue collar voters is that, the president of the Teamsters Union, he spoke at the RNC last night. So, those are the kinds of voters that Republicans are really targeting this election. I've always been a person, that says politics, obviously it's a game of numbers, but I always see politics as a game of addition, not of subtraction. And so I think what the Trump team has done year after year after year with the RNC is they've really made a move to expand their voting base from, I'd say, what's traditionally referred to as like the country club Republicans to the more working class demographic. And I think kind of with every election, you've seen Republicans gaining votes in a lot of those demographics. And, it's pretty easy to see, like in states like Pennsylvania, we're really looking at things like voter registration numbers, something that simple, whether people are flipping from one to the other or just sheerly adding to one column or another. Other states, like I think I've mentioned before, I live in Virginia. I'm based in Virginia. That's one of my states that I'm covering because I really do see it as a swing state this year. And, I think that's kind of backed up by the amount of dollars and events we're seeing here in Virginia, really on both sides, is that, the Trump team is making a play and the Biden team is, I think, feeling a little bit threatened. And so they're really going out and making sure that their presence is known, even in those deep blue states. And I think if we kind of shift that, again, a little bit north, the Trump team, by placing Vance in these key states, what they are really trying to do is, again, make the Democrats play in all of these states where they would have necessarily initially probably taken them for granted, right? Like that's, the onus of, Hillary Clinton didn't go to Wisconsin in 2016, and that's why she lost. Like that kind of narrative, I think, is really kind of a sore subject for a lot of Democrats from back in the 2016 election. And so I think now the Democrats don't want a repeat of that. So they're being made to send their key surrogates. That's obviously the president, the vice president, the first lady, and the second gentleman, their top campaign voices to those states. Just this morning I looked and Vice President Harris's team announced trips to to Michigan and to North Carolina. So again, these are states that Democrats want to, wish they didn't have to play in. Like they wish they could just be taken off the map and counted into their column. But Republicans are making it so that is not the case. And so the Democrats have to spread their dollars and their time with their top people very thin to cover the entire map.
Thank you very much for taking some time on the James Show again. This is Victoria Churchill. Where do they find you? New York Post Swing State Project, is that right?
Yep, New York Post. Again, you can find our Swing State column in the politics or the news section. Drop down Swing State 2024. Also, just look up my name, Victoria Churchill, and it should pop up. And follow the great work that my team and really the entire Post team is doing. Like I said, we're hitting the ground in the swing states as well as really all over the country to bring you the best stories.
All right. Well, get to work. Bring me some more stories. This is good stuff. Thank you. It's Victoria Churchill, New York Post Swing State Project. Coming up next, I like to end the show by talking to you. We're going to start with Barry, and then if you want to be after Barry, get on the phone. 800-288-9227. 800-288-9227. I'm looking at this electoral map, and a Senate flip is possible. In fact, I'm leaning toward it's probable. And we'll discuss all this next on The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3.